thanks for joining me today. Today we're going to be learning a strategy on how to retell a story. We're going to be using our 5 fingers to retell a story. Let me show you an example. So the thumb is the setting. The first finger is the characters. My tall finger is the beginning of the story, ring finger is the middle of the story, and my pinky is the end of the story. So I'm going to retell the story of the Little Mermaid. So first, the setting. So the setting is in the ocean. Ariel actually lives in the city of Atlantica. My characters. Ariel is the main character of this story. The whole story is about her. She's the Little Mermaid. She's in love with a prince named Eric. Her best friend is Flounder, and her other friends are Sebastian, the crab, and Scuttle, the seagull. We'll also need to know about Ursula, because she's the evil sea witch in the story. So in the beginning of the story, Ariel rescues Prince Eric, saves him from drowning, and she falls in love with him when she sees him dancing with his dog Max. So she saves him and she's in love with him. That's the beginning of the story. My ring finger is the middle of the story. In the middle of the story, she goes to the sea witch Ursula and gets changed into a human, but she exchanges her voice, so she can't talk to Prince Eric. In the end of the story, Ursula takes over the ocean, but the whole characters get together to stop her, and Prince Eric and Ariel live happily ever after. So that's an example of using my 5 fingers to retell a story. I have a little poster, the 5-finger retell, which has my setting, characters, beginning, middle, and end. We are going to do this today now with the story Lost and Found by Oliver Jeffers. It's a scholastic book, and we're going to read this together. Lost and Found by Oliver Jeffers. Once there was a boy who found a penguin at his door. So think about our pointer finger. What 2 characters are already introduced? The boy didn't know where it had come from, but it began to follow him everywhere. The penguin looked sad, and the boy thought it must be lost. So the boy decided to help the penguin find its way home. He checked in the Lost and Found office, but no one was missing a penguin. He asked some birds if they knew where the penguin came from, but they ignored him. Some birds are like that. The boy asked his duck, but the duck floated away. He didn't know either. That night, the boy couldn't sleep for disappointment. He wanted to help the penguin, but he wasn't sure how. The next morning, he discovered that penguins come from the South Pole. But how could he get it there? He ran down the harbor and asked a big ship to take them to the South Pole, but his voice was much too small to be heard over the ship's horn. Together, the boy decided he and the penguin would row to the South Pole. So the boy took his rowboat out and tested for size and strength. He told stories to the penguin to help pass the time. Then they packed everything they would need and pushed the rowboat out to sea. They rowed south for many days and many nights. There was lots of time for stories, and the penguin listened to every one, so the boy would always tell another. They floated through good weather and bad, when the waves were as big as mountains. Until, finally, they came to the South Pole. The boy was delighted, but the penguin said nothing. Suddenly, it looked sad again as the boy helped it out of the boat. Then the boy said goodbye and floated away. When he looked back, the penguin was still there, but it looked sadder than ever. It felt strange for the boy to be on his own. There was no point telling stories now, because there was no one to listen except the wind and the waves. Instead, he just thought. And the more he thought, the more he realized he had made a big mistake. The penguin hadn't been lost. It had just been lonely. Quickly he turned the boat around and rowed back to the South Pole as fast as he could. At last he reached the pole again, but where was the penguin? The boy searched and searched, but he was nowhere to be found. Sadly, the boy set off for home. But then the boy saw something in the water ahead of him. Closer and closer he got until he could see the penguin! Here they are hugging. And so the boy and his friend went home together, talking of wonderful things all the way. The end. Now we're going to use our 5-finger retell to retell the story of Lost and Found. So first is our setting. Where did that story take place? They were on the ocean and they went to the South Pole. So remember, the setting can be the time or just the place of where the story takes place. Next is our characters. What characters were in the story? We thought about that when they were first introduced. Right, the boy and the penguin. Now we have the beginning of the story. Can you tell me what happened in the beginning of the story? A penguin shows up and is very sad. You could have included other details. Now we have the middle of the story. What happened in the middle of the story? The boy takes the penguin to the South Pole. You also could have said that he searched and searched on where the penguin came from. And then the pinky is the end of the story. What happened in the end? The boy realizes that the penguin was just lonely, and they find each other again. You could also say that they told stories on their way home. Alright, so now my challenge for you guys is to retell a story to a family member or a friend using our 5-finger retell. You can read and retell a new story, you can retell Lost and Found to a family member, or retell another familiar story. Use your fingers to tell someone the characters, the setting, the beginning, middle, and end of the story. If you want, you can trace your hand and write what each finger is so you can remember the 5-finger retell. Keep reading and see you next time.